Maybe we're live.
Maybe we're not. We don't know. Hope you like it. What's going on? Hey, everybody.
Hey.
We are welcome to Sam Jose. I am Sam and
Jose.
And welcome to this amazing May Day. It is May 1st, and we are happy to join you today for Wine Talk. Yeah. So last episode, I told you guys that we would kind of jump into some white wines. We did try a Prosecco, but I got us tonight's wine. Are you ready? Drum roll. Boom. It's a Chardonnay. Good evening, Kim. Welcome. This is our wine tonight. It's from Robert Mondavi Private Selection. So it's really, really exciting. Let's smile for the camera, Jose. And it's barrel aged, so it does have oak. There are some Chardonnays that are not oaked. But this one, obviously, if it's aged in bourbon barrels, I'm sure it's got some oak in it. I'm going to pour a little bit in a glass for you to see. Since we haven't really dove into white wines yet, I want to show you a little bit of that pour. You've got a nice clear yellow, kind of a golden look to it, a hue right along the edge as far as the lip there. Ooh. Now, as this ages, as this wine gets a little bit older, it's going to become more golden, and that will show signs of age or oxidation for a white wine. But yes, you want a nice...
We agree.
Yeah, it is piss water. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But we're trying to open up our palates to some different wines. So let me get Jose first. We're going to drink these in a different glass because it is a white wine. So we've got our insulated glasses to keep the wine nice and chilled.
I like this one.
Jose's outdoorsy. He drinks wine out on the patio. So I'll give him some of this.
Hi, Stuart.
Hi, Stuart. Welcome. Again, for those of you that are drinking with us, hopefully you have an adult beverage of choice of your own. For those of you that are just joining us, we're drinking this Chardonnay from Robert Mondavi Private Selection, as far as it's a bourbon barrel-aged wine, white wine. We haven't really gotten into white wines a lot. I'm not a huge fan of white wines, and I'm going to tell you why right now. The citric acid, or as far as the citrus notes in a lot of the white wines, comes across as kind of a urine note to me on my palate. So that citrus note comes across as like stepping up to a urinal, and the guy before me didn't flush. So it's not necessarily the best. But I'm going to try this one. We're going to get into the white wines. I want to make sure that we're doing some great stuff. Kim's drinking a beer. I probably would enjoy that. But this is barrel-aged or bourbon barrel-aged. Is it good?
I don't think we're going to like this.
I don't. I don't enjoy it.
Oh, wow.
It's got a lot of oak. I don't think the fact that it was aged in a bourbon barrel changed it at all. It does give it that bourbon note. You can taste a little bit of the bourbon on the finish.
It's interesting.
I'm going to power through and at least finish one glass with our stories this evening. But it's not my favorite. Denise, I would rather be drinking Seagrams right now as well. Anything else, honestly. Yeah. Kim's like, I would love that white wine. It sounds awesome to me. It's not a bad white wine. I want to express that very candidly. Just because I don't enjoy white wines does not mean that they are bad. There are a lot of white wines out there that are incredibly good. I enjoy a sweeter white wine just because that sweetness kind of balances out the harsh acidity of the citric notes.
I mean, it's not bad.
He likes his white wines, but I should have brought the cheese in here. I was going to bring a nice sharp white aged cheddar to kind of pair with it, and that would have been good. But
it definitely, you need to have a few sips to appreciate it.
It's not horrible. I've got some good red wines. I bought a few bottles of some new red wines that we'll try over the next few episodes. So I'm looking forward to those. And the Moscato. So we have a sweeter white coming up as well in a future episode.
Wow, Trasher reminds me of being in high school. Yeah.
Well, no, Denise is drinking Seagrams, so...
Oh.
And I said, well, that's probably good too. So thank y'all for joining us tonight. Hopefully you have your adult beverage in hand. If not, if you're not drinking, that's okay as well. It's been a rough day, so I am going to enjoy this class, and I'll probably have another one. I'm going to keep it positive tonight, but someone I worked with very closely passed away today, so it's been a lot to process, and I'm still processing it. Big deep breath, but we're going to get through it, and I'm going to do a positive episode tonight just because that makes sense for the situation. So I'm going to keep it upbeat. But I want to give a shout out to my old Poseidon family and anybody that works within entertainment in the theme parks. If they knew Christian, you know who I'm talking about if you know him. And he was a good soul and an incredible person to work with. And that's it for now. I'm going to miss him terribly. So, but I'm going to rewind. Tonight's episode is all about me and Jose. So if you know Jose and I, you're going to get a little bit of a behind the scenes of who we were as kids or in our younger years. How young are you going?
I don't know. I think like today I was just thinking of when I was actually like a kid, like right when I was just like learning how to drive, like ride my bike. Because it made me think of a different version of myself.
Okay.
And I was like, oh wow, where did that person go? Like I still have some of those like traits, but I don't visit them as often as I
What traits? Like adventure or
just, kind of like being like, I had to like take notes because I forget things really easily. So and it takes me a little while to think about things. So some of the things it was just, being like brave and intelligent, kind, curious, silly, humble, which I still am, all of those things. But I think like as a kid, it's more magnified into like being brave. Like I was way braver than as a kid because I don't really think about the consequences that I had.
Oh, really?
Like I was just like, all right, I guess we're just going into the woods and figure out what's going to happen in here. Now I'm like, there's animals in there and there's these things, so I'm going to stay up here. So like that's kind of like what I mean.
Yeah, Denise, drinking Seagrams is young and brave, especially for the next day, the day after. But yeah, I guess from that perspective, I think to a certain degree, I was a little more brave as a younger man as well, or a younger kid. I had a lot of anxiety as a kid, which I still have anxiety as an adult, but it was substantial as a kid. Like I would get sick to my stomach, and my mom she'd be like, you got to be careful. You're going to give yourself an ulcer. And which would then make me stress out more because now I'm stressing about what I was stressing about, plus the possibility of getting an ulcer, which all I knew was my stomach was bleeding inside of me, which is pretty much what it is. But luckily no ulcers, so that's a good thing.
Hi.
But do you have a particular memory as far as your bike or a specific situation?
Well, yeah. Like, like one of the stories that I had, it just goes about like being brave and, being courageous, I guess, and not being afraid of something. I just learned how to ride a bike, and I think it was like a week after I just learned. Our house was like, it was set on like land that wasn't level, so it was like on a hill. So like our house was here, driveway was there, but then like there was another floor basically, but it was just like the yard.
Oh, okay.
And there was supposed to be like fencing around a wall, but it was still being built. So here I come like on my bike and I'm like going through because I'm like, oh, if I just keep pedaling and then I hit the brakes as soon as I pass the door where my mom is sitting, because it was going to be one of those quick like, hi mom, and then stop and then come back. Well, the brakes didn't work. And I went down this fall and it was basically from a second story, like on the roof of the house. And I landed straight on my face, and my family was like waiting for me to come back around, and I'm like on the floor crying, and then they actually came out. But like it was kind of like one of those things, like being silly, stupid, but also kind of brave and just taking a chance. I didn't really think about it. But like nothing happened to me. It was just more the scared thing of the fall, but that was it. It wasn't really nothing crazy.
Well, I didn't know we were telling
But, I
bike
mean-
stories. I have a lot of good bike stories.
But yeah, but I thought that's what we were talking about. I don't know.
Bike, well, as us being kids.
I mean, it's just me.
Well, I did a faceplant off of one of my bikes as a kid as well. I grew up in Salt Lake, and I grew up in the Avenues, which is, you got downtown Salt Lake, and then just right north of it is the Avenues, just kind of outside. Like, it was less than 2 miles to downtown Salt Lake from my house. But basically, one day, my cousin was living with us, and he and I decided to ride our bikes all the way down to our aunt's house in Sugar House, which is the southern side of the valley, or further south in the Salt Lake Valley, about 12, 14 miles away from her house, which on a bike is not too bad, but I also was probably 11 or 10 or 11, and my cousin was 12 or 13. So here we are riding our bikes down 13th East towards Sugar House, and another sip of piss water. Anyways, but
it's 14.5, so
that's one of the reasons why I was okay with getting it. Here we were in Sugar House Park, and there was a jogging trail, and it was still kind of cold out. So it was spring, there was still ice on the ground, but it still was warmer. So we were going down some of the hills on this jogging track, and I hit an ice patch, and I went right over my handlebars. And I landed on my chin, and I've got a scar there. I don't know if you can still see it.
Move your finger.
Right.
Oh, I see it. It's there.
Yeah, there's a scar there. So I took a faceplant down into the ground, just concrete, and I was so jarred, I couldn't process what was going on, and I remember some guy was like, "Oh, buddy, that looked like a bad spill," and my cousin was behind me, he got off of his bike, and this guy's looking at my chin, and he's got a cigarette in his hand, and he's just like this, like, "Oh, buddy, that looks really bad," and I'm just like, he's like, "That looks really bad," and I'm just like, "Oh gosh."
Yeah.
So I somehow managed to get something on my chin, and my cousin and I finished, and I'm 10 or 11 here, and it's just one of those, like, we gotta make it work, you know? So we finally found our way to my aunt's house, and I think my dad or my mom was gonna pick us up then, and she put a butterfly Band-Aid on it to keep it closed, my aunt did, and it was just bleeding, but that was that. So there you go. But yeah, as a kid, I felt indestructible. Like, I fell down all the time. I would fall off out of trees. I
didn't.
I fell off the
really
trampoline. I honestly don't understand how I made it through my childhood without breaking one of my bones, but
Listen, I was always careful about what I did. But, you know, then again, I could just go anywhere and not really be afraid of anything until I started learning more things. But, are you done with your story?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I guess another one of my childhood things that I'm still very curious about things, and I always try to figure out how everything works. Where, like, as a kid, if a radio broke or a TV broke or anything, I would just open everything up and, like, learn what everything was on, like, the actual electric boards and try to figure out how it worked, what's broken, fix it, and if I didn't fix it, I would go back and try again. And, like, my dad would always tell me, if you can't get it, just walk away from it and come back tomorrow. And because he would see how frustrated I would get until, you know, I would finally fix it. I mean, that still applies to today. I still kind of, something doesn't work, or I'm still trying to learn a new program and it's not coming up. I just have to completely stop and then come back to it later. And then I'll usually get it. But nowadays we have so many things that you can find resources from, like online. Everything is ready for you there. So, yes.
One trait that I've always had that has carried over into adulthood for me is probably my persistence and my passion. I become very passionate about certain things. And for those of you who know me, have worked with me, or have met me, hung out with me, you know that sometimes I just have to prove a point. So I'm going to go back to high school for this story, and this is kind of a fun story. Uh, it was right before my senior year, so I was 17, and I received a letter in the mail stating I couldn't register for classes for my senior year because I hadn't turned in one of my English books. And I know I had turned it in. So I called the vice principal who was in the office, and I said, hey, I received this letter stating that I didn't turn in my English book, so I have to pay for it or else I can't register. He was like, that's correct. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. I turned it in. I know I did. So what had happened was I had switched English teachers in the semester. That's a whole separate story. Of course, I have lots of stories, but that's irrelevant for this. But that teacher that I switched out of her class, I had taken her the book after I had gotten into the new English class, and I gave it to her in the hallway. And she said, I'm really sorry, you're not going to be in my class this semester. And I said, it's probably for the better because we didn't get along. And yeah, in high school I was that candid. I don't know how. I've learned a lot of tact over the years. I was probably more direct in high school than even I am now, and that's saying a lot for me. So, but anyways, he said that I could go down to the high school, the vice principal did. He's like, well, if you want to come down and look through the book room, if the English book is here, then you don't have to pay anything. You're registered. You can register, you'll be good. So I said, well, I know I turned it in, so I'll be down. And the next day I went down, or we set up a time, I can't remember. But I went down to the high school and I checked into his office and I said, hey, I'm here to look through the book room. And I said, well, I have a question. Is it possible, because I gave it to her right as classes were transitioning, is it possible that she went in and issued it to someone else and that person didn't turn it in? And the vice principal, Mr. Trudeau, he was like, no, that's unlikely. But let me take you down to the book room. So I go down to the book room and I look through every single English book from the junior English classes. Every single one. And there was 400 and something kids in my class at the time. So I went through and I looked through all of them twice because I couldn't find it the first time. And I'm persistent as can be. Anybody knows. Like, if I know something, I know. And so I looked through them twice, and then I went back to the vice principal's office, and I said, I know I turned in this book, and I'm not paying for a book that I turned in. I won't. I'm not paying for that. And he went on to say, and I said, okay, well, let's call the teacher. And we called the teacher, and she said, oh, I don't remember you giving it to me. And I was just in this, like, shock. Like, I am not paying $60 for, or however much it was for that book, for something that I turned in. Like, that's ridiculous. So then he finally took out the sheets of all the papers from the teachers, of their records of who checked out what book. And the very last book to be checked out for that particular classroom was my book to a different student who also didn't turn it in. So my book number was listed twice, once for me and then once for the other student. So she had done. So then I looked at the vice principal in the eyes and I said, oh, so when I said that it could have been issued to someone else and they didn't turn it in, and you said that that probably didn't happen, all of my wasted time could have been saved if you had just looked at the paperwork. And he looked at me and goes, that's correct. And I said, so you've wasted my time because you didn't want to look at the paperwork? And he's like, yeah, I'm really sorry. And luckily, I mean, he apologized and everything. And I'll tell you what, the vice principal didn't give me any hassles my senior year. I had no issues because he knew I'm going to call him out on it. And I was right. So if you have people that are in school and they're high school age, sometimes adults aren't always correct. They don't. I'm 36, as I've been saying for the past week, because I've been 36 for me. But adults can also forget stuff, and adults have a lot on their minds. And I think it's important to listen sometimes to those of a younger age, because sometimes they just have a different perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good thing about this episode is we are not necessarily different people than we were when we were younger, but we've grown.
Yeah.
we've built upon those traits that we've had. We've fine-tuned them, and we can use them a little bit better in the real world, right?
Yeah. I mean, my next story is, and this is how I was as a kid. Like my family basically had everything that you can think of that you need while I was a kid. There wasn't really an issue with like finances. It wasn't an issue with vehicles or houses or, everything was there. But I was raised to appreciate just $5. So this story, one time, it was just for my birthday, and one of my grandfather's acquaintances that he knew, he just comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, happy birthday," and gives me an envelope. And I'm like, okay. So I open it, and it's a $50 bill, and that was the first time that I've ever gotten a $50 bill. And I just started crying, and I couldn't stop crying for like an hour. And they're like, "It's okay," and I was like, "It's so much money," and I just completely lost it. But and I saved it for like 2 months before I actually went into like Toys R Us and walked around to actually get a toy, because my mom was like, "You do whatever you want with it." So she's like, "If you want to go pick out a toy, we can go pick out a toy." And I was like, "Okay." So we went and picked out a toy. And
$50.
Yeah. So it was my first $50 that I got, and I still remember it, and I remember exactly where we were and everything. We were out to eat and everything. So yeah.
There you go.
And now I look at $50 and I'm like, that's it? I'm just kidding.
$50 is still like, oh,
I know, $50. I'm like, all right. Now, if you give me $1, I'm going to be like, all right.
So I think that concludes tonight's episode.
Yeah, we're going to try to finish this.
For those of you, if you missed what wine we were enjoying this evening, we're enjoying a Chardonnay from the Robert Mondavi. Private. Yeah, so this winery, I didn't really touch on the label itself, but it does say it has creamy layers of ripe pineapple and juicy peach to the wine. I don't catch any of the peach. Maybe some pineapple hints
I get
there.
A little pineapple there, but
I do taste the bourbon and caramel, vanilla, and toasty oak. That's definitely with the bourbon there. It's 14.5% alcohol by volume. If you like white wines, you'll probably enjoy this, especially if you like bourbon as well, because you do catch those bourbon notes on it, definitely, and they're pretty good. So I'm not a white wine drinker, but I've had several. I've had a lot of white wine before, and as far as white wines go, this is a fairly enjoyable one. If you enjoy white wines, I don't. I am much more of a red wine or a rosé, maybe. I need some tannins in there as well, just a little bit. But so thank you for joining us. We are welcome to San Jose. We're going to continue these. We've got, like I said, some other reds coming up in some future episodes. We've got another bourbon barreled red wine. I've got a Moscato and a Merlot.
Jeez, we're like winos over here.
Hey, we're just exploring wine, right? So thank you for joining us. We hope that things are going well with you. Yep. And go ahead and comment if you're watching this video after the fact. Let us know what wines you enjoy, what you'd like for us to kind of explore with you, what types of stories you'd like to hear. And be sure to share these videos with your friends so that they can join us on these wine nights. Thank you so much. We are welcome to San Jose. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share our videos from YouTube. Go ahead to YouTube and search Welcome to San Jose. And go ahead and give us a like and comment. Comment on the videos. Let us know what you like about them, what you'd like to see more of, what you enjoyed. We're trying to really build this channel, and feedback from our viewers is essential to that. So thank you so much. And I'm Sam, and this is
Jose.
You have a good one.
See you later.